All right, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. So, let's settle in, get comfortable, and pick back up where we left off. Welcome back. It's been a few days. I had a terrible bout of a head cold, sinus infection, whatever you want to call it. Pretty much laid me out. I get one of those every few years, and I was past due, I guess. So, I'm mostly recovered. A bit of a crick in my neck and a lingering cough, but we're close. We're at the point where I can comfortably, probably, make it through a night's reading without keeling over as the last couple have been. So, I'm itching to get back to it. So, thanks for being patient. I know we missed our 1-year anniversary, which was yesterday, and I am actually kind of crushed about that. But let's go ahead and make some other plans. I'm thinking, so I think next Saturday is probably a good time to celebrate that. We probably won't be doing a full marathon like we did on the birthday stream, but I think next Saturday is a perfect time to kick off something new that I've been planning, and that is to have an extended reading, and we're going to start doing unarchived streams on Saturdays. So, we're going to run 2 books in parallel, our normal readings on normal days, that are our normal 2-hour sessions, and then I'm thinking on Saturdays, we can do probably a 4-hour reading of something that is not in the public domain and is not going to be archived. It will still be on YouTube and Twitch both, so you can go to your platform of choice, but there will not be VODs of these. I'll save the recordings, and we might use them later on for some rebroadcasts. So that gives us some options. But I think it is a good time, a good opportunity to take just a bit of a shift. We can add some modernity to our readings. It gives us the option to approach some new classics, well, new compared to what we usually read, things like Tolkien, or even going into some sci-fi that is a little bit more robust than the periodicals that we've read so far. And it gives us so much more freedom, and it's just fun. A lot of the more modern books are less serious and more just entertainment value. And that is fine in my books. Yeah, so, and given that those are going to be 4-hour sessions, we'll be able to get a little bit more visibility, I think. I know Twitch likes the 4-hour block. You've come up on recommended a little bit more frequently. And we've proven that we can normally, health willing, make it through between 2 and 4 hours without really any fuss. We did our marathon a while back, and I'd barely been going for 6 months, and we did, it was 6 or 8 hours that we made? I think it was closer to 10. And we got really no worse for wear. So I think we can manage it. I think we can, especially if we're switching it up and having different books on those special days. So the plan right now, and I'll update the Twitch schedule to reflect it, and I am past due for updating the schedule that got posted on Bluesky, and actually that reminds me, I need to repost my Bluesky post, because I always forget to make the rounds on my socials. Oh, the add-in I did is already set me to live on Bluesky. Lovely. It is a wonderfully pleasant surprise when those things work. So, I'll update those schedules in the coming days, so that we can have the awareness. But, I think it should do us wonderfully. Well, I've been doing it manually for a little bit, but there's I think it's Purple Sky going around, an add-in that interfaces between the two. And I think it was just this last time that it did it automatically. So I certainly forgot to flip it myself. So I will take that as a win. But yeah, so starting next week, on Saturday, we will be having our unarchived specials on Saturdays. I think we'll just start at 6 instead of 8, and we'll run until our normal end time. That works pretty well for me, and it's a weekend, so I think we should be able to swing it. If you can make the full time, fantastic. If not, that's fine too. We'll do what we can. But our regular readings on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays will continue as always, because the classics aren't going anywhere, and neither are we. So, with that out of the way, it's been a year with the channel now. Our celebration as such will be on Saturday. We missed our actual anniversary, and so we'll just put that off a little bit. I'm not too big on celebrations, but I do want to make a bit of a howdy-do about it on the day. So, look forward to that on Saturday. I have something else that's been cooking for a while and is ready, but I need to have the proper occasion. So, that's something else to look forward to on Saturday. Alright. So, with all that preamble and yap out of the way, and kind of... Alright, that's a lingering cough. It's not actually a bad sign. You know how things go. With that preamble out of the way and sort of warming up the pipes, let's go ahead and get back to Don Quixote, where we left off. And so we resume from chapter 24, in which is continued the adventure of the Sierra Morena. You may remember they were lost in the mountains. The history relates that it was with the greatest attention Don Quixote listened to the ragged knight of the Sierra, who began by saying, "Of a surety, Signor, whoever you are, for I know you not, I thank you for the proofs of kindness and courtesy you have shown me, and would I were in a condition to requite with something more than goodwill that which you have displayed towards me in the cordial reception you have given me, but my fate does not afford me any other means of returning kindnesses done me, save the hearty desire to repay them." "Mine," replied Don Quixote, "is to be of service to you, so much so that I had resolved not to quit these mountains until I had found you, and learned of you whether there is any kind of relief to be found for that sorrow under which, from the strangeness of your life, you seem to labor, and to search for you with all possible diligence, if search had been necessary. And if your misfortune should prove to be one of those that refuse admission to any sort of consolation, it was my purpose to join you in lamenting and mourning over it, so far as I could, for it is still some comfort in misfortune to find one who can feel for it. And if my good intentions deserve to be acknowledged with any kind of courtesy, I entreat you, Signor, by that which I perceive you possess in so high a degree, and likewise conjure you by whatever you love or have loved best in life, to tell me who you are, and the cause that has brought you to live or die in these solitudes like a brute beast, dwelling among them in a manner so foreign to your condition as your garb and appearance show. And I swear," added Don Quixote, "by the order of knighthood which I have received, and by my vocation of knight-errant, if you gratify me in this, to serve you with all the zeal my calling demands of me, either in relieving your misfortune, if it admits of relief, or in joining you in lamenting it as I promised to do." The Knight of the Thicket, hearing him of the rueful countenance talk in this strain, did nothing but stare at him, and stare at him again, and again survey him from head to foot. And when he had thoroughly examined him, he said to him, "If you have anything to give me to eat, for God's sake give it me, and after I've eaten, I will do all you ask in acknowledgment of the good will you have displayed toward me." Sancho from his sack and the goatherd from his pouch furnished the Ragged One with the means of appeasing his hunger. And what they gave him, he ate like a half-witted being, so hastily that he took no time between mouthfuls, gorging rather than swallowing, and while he ate, neither he nor they who observed him uttered a word. As soon as he had done, he made signs to them to follow him, which they did, and he led them to a green plot which lay a little farther off round the corner of a rock. On reaching it, he stretched himself upon the grass, and the others did the same, all keeping silence, until the Ragged One, settling himself in his place, said, "If it is your wish, sirs, that I should disclose in a few words the surpassing extent of my misfortunes, you must promise not to break the thread of my sad story with any question or any other interruption, for the instant you do so, the tale I tell will come to an end." These words of the Ragged One reminded Don Quixote of the tale his squire had told him, when he failed to keep count of the goats that had crossed the river, and the story remained unfinished. But to return to the Ragged One, he went on to say, "I give you this warning, because I wish to pass briefly over the story of my misfortunes, for recalling them to memory only serves to add fresh ones, and the less you question me, the sooner shall I make an end of the recital, though I shall not omit or to relate anything of importance in order fully to satisfy your curiosity." Don Quixote gave the promise for himself and the others, and with this assurance he began as follows. "My name is Cardenio. My birthplace is one of the best cities of this Andalusia. My family noble, my parents rich, my misfortune so great that my parents must have wept and my family grieved over it without being able, by their wealth, to lighten it, for the gifts of fortune can do little to relieve reverses sent by heaven. In that same country, there was a heaven in which love had placed all the glory I could desire. Such was the beauty of Lucinda, a damsel as noble and as rich as I, but of happier fortunes, and of less firmness than was due to so worthy a passion as mine. This Lucinda I loved, worshipped, and adored from my earliest and tenderest years, and she loved me in all the innocence and sincerity of childhood. Our parents were aware of our feelings, and were not sorry to perceive them, for they saw clearly that, as they ripened, they must lead at last to marriage between us, a thing that seemed almost prearranged by the equality of our families and wealth. We grew up, and with our growth grew the love between us, so that the father of Lucinda felt bound, for propriety's sake, to refuse me admission to his house, in this perhaps imitating the parents of that Thisbe, so celebrated by the poets. And this refusal but added love to love, and flame to flame, for though they enforced silence upon our tongues, they could not impose it upon our pens, which can make known the heart's secrets to a loved one more freely than tongues. For many a time, the presence of the object of love shakes the firmest will, and strikes dumb the boldest tongue. Ah, heavens! How many letters did I write her, and how many dainty, modest replies did I receive! How many ditties and love songs did I compose, in which my heart declared and made known its feelings, described its ardent longings, revelled in its recollections, and dallied with its desires. At length, growing impatient, and feeling my heart languishing with longing to see her, I resolved to put into execution and carry out what seemed to me the best mode of winning my desired and merited reward, to ask her of her father for my lawful wife, which I did. To this, his answer was that he thanked me for the disposition I showed to do honor to him, and to regard myself as honored by the bestowal of his treasure, but that as my father was alive, it was his by right to make this demand, for If it were not in accordance with his full will and pleasure, Lucinda was not to be taken by stealth, or given by stealth. I thanked him for his kindness, reflecting that there was reason in what he said, and that my father would assent to it as soon as I should tell him, and with that view I went the very same instant to let him know what my desires were. When I entered the room where he was, I found him with an open letter in his hand, which, before I could utter a word, he gave me, saying, "By this letter thou wilt see, Cardenio, the disposition the Duke Ricardo has to serve thee." This Duke Ricardo, as you sirs probably know already, is a grande of Spain, who has his seat in the best part of this Andalusia. I took and read the letter, which was couched in terms so flattering that even I myself felt it would be wrong in my father not to comply with the request the Duke made in it, which was, that he would send me immediately to him, as he wished me to become the companion, not servant, of his eldest son, and would take upon himself the charge of placing me in a position corresponding to the esteem in which he held me. On reading the letter my voice failed me, and still more when I heard my father say, "2 days hence thou wilt depart, Cardenio, in accordance with the Duke's wish, and give thanks to God, who is opening a road to thee, by which thou mayest attain what I know thou dost deserve." And to these words he added others of fatherly counsel. The time for my departure arrived. I spoke one night to Lucinda. I told her that all that had occurred, as I did also to her father, entreating him to allow some delay, and to defer the disposal of her hand until I should see what the Duke Ricardo sought of me. He gave me the promise, and she confirmed it with vows and swoonings unnumbered. Finally, I presented myself to the Duke, and was received and treated by him so kindly that very soon envy began to do its work, the old servants growing envious of me, and regarding the Duke's inclination to show me favour as an injury to themselves. But the one to whom my arrival gave the greatest pleasure was the Duke's second son, Fernando by name, a gallant youth of noble, generous, and amorous disposition, who very soon made so intimate a friend of me that it was remarked by everybody, for though the elder was attached to me and showed me kindness, he did not carry his affectionate treatment to the same length as Don Fernando. It so happened, then, that as between friends no secret remains unshared, and as the favour I enjoyed with Don Fernando had grown into friendship, he made all his thoughts known to me, and, in particular, a love affair which troubled his mind a little. He was deeply in love with a peasant girl, a vassal of his father's, the daughter of wealthy parents, and herself so beautiful, modest, discreet, and virtuous, that no one who knew her was able to decide in which of these respects she was most highly gifted or most excelled. The attractions of the fair peasant raised the passion of Don Fernando to such a point that, in order to gain his object and overcome her virtuous resolutions, he determined to pledge his word to her to become her husband. For to attempt it in any other way was to attempt an impossibility. Bound to him as I was by friendship, I strove, by the best arguments and the most forcible examples I could think of, to restrain and dissuade him from such a course. But, perceiving I produced no effect, I resolved to make the Duke Ricardo, his father, acquainted with the matter. But Don Fernando, being sharp-witted and shrewd, foresaw and apprehended this, perceiving that by my duty as a good servant I was bound not to keep concealed a thing so much opposed to the honour of my lord the Duke. And so, to mislead and deceive me, he told me he could find no better way of effacing from his mind the beauty that so enslaved him than by absenting himself for some months, and that he wished the absence to be effected by our going, both of us, to my father's house, under the pretence, which he would make to the Duke, of going to see and buy some fine horses that there were in my city, which produces the best in the world. When I heard him say so, even if his resolution had not been so good a one, I should have hailed it as one of the happiest that could be imagined, prompted by my affection, seeing what a favourable chance and opportunity it offered me of returning to see my Lucinda. With this thought and wish, I commended his idea and encouraged his design, advising him to put it into execution as quickly as possible, as, in truth, absence produced its effect in spite of the most deeply rooted feelings. But, as afterwards appeared, when he said this to me, he had already enjoyed the peasant girl under the title of husband, and was waiting for an opportunity of making it known with safety to himself, being in dread of what his father the Duke would do when he came to know of his folly. It happened then that, as with young men, love is, for the most part, nothing more than appetite, which, as its final object is enjoyment, comes to an end on obtaining it. And that which seemed to be love takes to flight, as it cannot pass the limit fixed by nature, which fixes no limit to true love. What I mean is, that after Don Fernando had enjoyed this peasant girl, his passion subsided, and his eagerness cooled. And, if at first he feigned a wish to absent himself in order to cure his love, he was now in reality anxious to go, to avoid keeping his promise. The Duke gave him permission, and ordered me to accompany him. We arrived at my city, and my father gave him the reception due to his rank. I saw Lucinda without delay, and, though it had not been dead or deadened, my love gathered fresh life. To my sorrow, I told the story of it to Don Fernando, for I thought that, in virtue of the great friendship he bore me, I was bound to conceal nothing from him. I extolled her beauty, her gaiety, her wit, so warmly, that my praises excited in him a desire to see a damsel adorned by such attractions. To my misfortune, I yielded to it, showing her to him one night by the light of a taper at a window where we used to talk to one another. As she appeared to him in her dressing gown, she drove all the beauties he had seen until then out of his recollection. Speech failed him. His head turned. He was spellbound. And, in the end, love-smitten, as you will see in the course of the story of my misfortune, and, to inflame still further his passion, which he hid from me and revealed to heaven alone, it so happened that one day he found a note of hers entreating me to demand her of her father in marriage. So delicate, so modest, and so tender, that on reading it he told me that in Lucinda alone were combined all the charms of beauty and understanding that were distributed among all the other women in the world. It is true, and I own it now, that though I knew what good cause Don Fernando had to praise Lucinda, it gave me uneasiness to hear these praises from his mouth, and I began to fear, and with reason, to feel distrust of him, for there was no moment when he was not ready to talk of Lucinda, and he would start the subject himself, even though he dragged it in unseasonably, a circumstance that aroused in me a certain amount of jealousy. Not that I feared any change in the constancy or faith of Lucinda, but still, my fate led me to forebode what she assured me against. Don Fernando contrived always to read the letters I sent to Lucinda, and her answers to me, under the pretense that he enjoyed the wit and sense of both. It so happened, then, that Lucinda, having begged of me a book of chivalry to read, one that she was very fond of, Amadis of Gaul, Don Quixote no sooner heard a book of chivalry mentioned than he said, oh, here he goes. And your worship told me at the beginning of your story that the Lady Lucinda was fond of books of chivalry, no other laudation would have been requisite to impress upon me the superiority of her understanding, for it could not have been of the excellence you describe had a taste for such delightful reading not been wanting. So, as far as I am concerned, you need waste no more words in describing her beauty, worth, and intelligence, for on merely hearing what her taste was, I declare her to be the most beautiful and the most intelligent woman in the world, and I wish your worship had, along with Amadis of Gaul, sent her the worthy Don Rugel of Greece, for I know that Lady Lucinda would greatly relish Derrida and Graia, and the shrewd sayings of the shepherd Darinel, and the admirable verses of his bucolics, sung and delivered by him with such sprightliness, wit, and ease. But a time may come when this omission can be remedied, and to rectify it. Nothing more is needed than for your worship to be so good as to come with me to my village, for there I can give you more than 300 books, which are the delight of my soul and the entertainment of my life. Though it occurs to me that I have not got one of them now, thanks to the spite of wicked and envious enchanters. But pardon me for having broken the promise we made not to interrupt your discourse. For when I hear of chivalry or knights errant mentioned, I can no more help talking about them than the rays of the sun can help giving heat, or those of the moon moisture. Pardon me, therefore, and proceed, for that is more to the purpose now. While Don Quixote was saying this, Cardenio allowed his head to fall upon his breast, and seemed plunged in deep thought. And though twice Don Quixote bade him go on with his story, he neither looked up nor uttered a word in reply. But after some time he raised his head and said, "I cannot get rid of the idea, nor will anyone in the world remove it, or make me think otherwise. And he would be a blockhead who would hold or believe anything else than that errant knave Master Elcevard made free with Queen Madasima." "That is not true, by all that's good," said Don Quixote in high wrath, turning upon him angrily as his way was. "And it is a very great slander, or rather villainy. Queen Madasima was a very illustrious lady, and it is not to be supposed that so exalted a princess would have made free with a quack. And whoever maintains the contrary lies like a great scoundrel, and I will give him to know it, on foot or on horseback, armed or unarmed, by night or by day, or as he likes best." Cardenio was looking at him steadily, and his mad fit having now come upon him, he had no disposition to go on with his story, nor would Don Quixote have listened to it, so much had what he had heard about Madasima disgusted him. Strange to say, he stood up for her as if she were in earnest his veritable born lady. To such a pass had his unholy books brought him. Cardenio, then, being, as I said, now mad, when he heard himself given the lie, and called a scoundrel and other insulting names, not relishing the jest, snatched up a stone that he found near him, and with it delivered such a blow on Don Quixote's breast that he laid him on his back. Sancho Panza, seeing his master treated in this fashion, attacked the madman with his closed fist. But the ragged one received him in such a way that, with a blow of his fist, he stretched him at his feet, and then, mounting upon him, crushed his ribs to his own satisfaction. The goatherd, who came to the rescue, shared the same fate, and, having beaten and pummeled them all, he left them, and quietly withdrew to his hiding place on the mountain. Sancho rose, and, with the rage he felt at finding himself so belabored, without deserving it, he ran to take vengeance on the goatherd, accusing him of not giving them warning that this man was at times taken with a mad fit, for if they had known it, they would have been on their guard to protect themselves. The goatherd replied that he had said so, and that if he had not heard them, that was at no fault of his. Sancho retorted, and the goatherd rejoined, and the altercation ended in their seizing each other by the beard, and exchanging such fisticuffs that if Don Quixote had not made peace between them, they would have knocked one another to pieces. "Leave me alone, Sir Knight of the Rueful Countenance," said Sancho, grappling with the goatherd, "for of this fellow, who is a clown like myself, and no dubbed knight, I can safely take satisfaction for the affront he has offered me, fighting with him hand to hand like an honest man." "That is true," said Don Quixote, "but I know that he is not to blame for what has happened." With this he pacified them, and again asked the goatherd if it would be possible to find Cardenio, as he felt the greatest anxiety to know the end of his story. The goatherd told him, as he had told him before, that there was no knowing of a certainty where his lair was, but that if he wandered about much in that neighborhood, he could not fail to fall in with him either in or out of his senses. Well, it certainly did not take Don Quixote long to break his promise to let the story go on uninterrupted. All it took was just a single mention that the lady was a fan of books of chivalry. Imagine someone telling a story and you hear that they, like, oh, they enjoy reading Song of Ice and Fire, and that sends you off on a tangent. Just completely unable to hold your tongue. Actually, I can imagine that pretty well. You know what? I think Don Quixote might just be an early example of prime hyperfixation autism. That's all this is. He might be a little crazy, but you know what? This is just a hyperfixation. The knights are his trains. And that's fine. Usually you just don't get lost in pretending that you're Thomas the Train Engine, but, you know, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not one to judge. We're just here to read. All right, let's continue with chapter 25, which treats of the strange things that happened to the stout Knight of La Mancha in the Sierra Morena, and of his imitation of the penance of Beltenebros. Yeah, see? That's the difference. You can have an unhealthy love for a thing without making yourself out to be a thing. That's the difference. That's where Don Quixote takes it a step too far. Alright. Don Quixote took leave of the goatherd, and once more mounting Rocinante, bade Sancho follow him, which he, having no ass, did very discontentedly. Remember that Sancho's donkey has been stolen. But I love every time that I know they are referring to a donkey every time they say ass. But the phrasing is evocative. They proceeded slowly, making their way into the most rugged part of the mountain. Sancho, all the while dying to have a talk with his master, and longing for him to begin, so that there should be no breach of the injunction laid upon him. But, unable to keep silence so long, he said to him, "Signor Don Quixote, give me your worship's blessing and dismissal, for I'd like to go home at once to my wife and children, with whom I can, at any rate, talk and converse as much as I like. For to want me to go through these solitudes day and night and not speak to you when I have a mind is burying me alive. If luck would have it that animals spoke as they did in the days of Guisapete, it would not be so bad, because I could talk to Rocinante about whatever came into my head, and so put up with my ill fortune. But it is a hard case, and not to be borne with patience. To go seeking adventures all one's life and get nothing but kicks and blanketings, brickbats and punches, and with all this to have to sew up one's mouth without daring to say what is in one's heart, just as if one were dumb." "I understand thee, Sancho," replied Don Quixote. "Thou art dying to have the interdict I placed upon thy tongue removed. Consider it removed, and say what thou wilt while we are wandering in these mountains." "So be it," said Sancho. "Let me speak for now, for God knows what will happen by and by, and to take advantage of the permit at once, I ask, what made your worship stand up so for that Queen Majimasa, or whatever her name is? Or what did it matter whether that abbot was a friend of hers or not? For if your worship had let that pass, and you were not a judge in the matter, it is my belief that the madman would have gone on with his story, and the blow of the stone and the kicks and more than half a dozen cuffs would have been escaped."
In faith, Sancho, answered Don Quixote, if thou knewest as I do what an honourable and illustrious lady Queen Marcima was, I know thou wouldst say I had great patience, that I did not break in pieces the mouth that uttered such blasphemies. For a very great blasphemy it is to say or imagine that a queen has made free with a surgeon. The truth of the story is that Master Elisabard, whom the madman mentioned, was a man of great prudence and sound judgment, and served as governor and physician to the queen. But to suppose that she was his mistress is nonsense, deserving very severe punishment. And, as a proof that Cardenio did not know what he was saying, remember, when he said it, he was out of his wits.
That is what I say, said Sancho, but there was no occasion for minding the words of a madman. For if good luck had not helped your worship, and he had sent that stone at your head instead of at your breast, a fine way we should have been in standing up for my lady yonder. God confound her! And then, would not Cardenio have gone free as a madman?
Against men in their senses, or against madmen, said Don Quixote, every knight-errant is bound to stand up for the honour of women, whoever they may be, much more for queens of such high degree and dignity as Queen Marcima, for whom I have a particular regard on account of her amiable qualities, for, besides being extremely beautiful, she was very wise and very patient under her misfortunes, of which she had many, and the counsel and society of the Master Elisabard were a great help, and support her in enduring her inflictions with wisdom and resignation. Hence the ignorant and ill-disposed vulgar took occasion to say and think that she was his mistress, and they lie. I say it once more, and will lie 200 times more, all who think and say so.
I neither say nor think so, said Sancho. Let them look to it. With their bread, let them eat it. They have rendered account to God whether they misbehaved or not. I come from my vineyard. I know nothing. I am not fond of prying into other men's lives. He who buys and lies feels it in his purse. Moreover, naked was I born, naked I find myself, and I neither lose nor gain. But if they did, what is that to me? Many thinks there are flitches where there are no hooks, but who can put gates to the open plain? Moreover, they said of God, God bless me, said Don Quixote.
What a set of absurdities thou art stringing together! What has what we are talking about got to do with the proverbs thou art threading one after the other? For God's sake, hold thy tongue, Sancho, and henceforward keep prodding thy ass, and don't meddle in what does not concern thee, and understand with all thy 5 senses that everything I have done, am doing, or shall do, is well founded on reason, and in conformity with the rules of chivalry, for I understand them better than all the world that profess them.
Don Quixote, brother, Sancho is spot on here. Just calm down, brother. Señor, replied Sancho, is it a good rule of chivalry that we should go astray through these mountains without path or road, looking for a madman who, when he is found, will perhaps take a fancy to finish what he began? Not his story, but your worship's head and my ribs, and end by breaking them all together for us.
Peace, I say again, Sancho, said Don Quixote, for let me tell thee, it is not so much the desire of finding that madman that leads me into these regions, as that which I have of performing among them an achievement, wherewith I shall win eternal name and fame throughout the known world. And it shall be such that I shall thereby set the seal on all that can make a knight-errant perfect and famous.
And is it a very perilous, this achievement?
No, replied he of the rueful countenance, though it may be in the dice that we may throw deuce ace instead of sixes, but all will depend on thy diligence.
On my diligence, said Sancho.
Yes, said Don Quixote, for if thou dost return soon from the place where I mean to send thee, my penance will soon be over. and my glory will soon begin. But as it is not right to keep thee any longer in suspense, waiting to see what comes of my words, I would have thee know, Sancho, that the famous Amadis of Gaul was one of the most perfect knight-errant. I am wrong to say he was one. He stood alone, the first, the only one, the lord of all that were in the world in his time. Pig for Don Bellianus, and for all who say he equalled him in any respect, for my oath upon it, they are deceiving themselves. I say, too, that when a painter desires to become famous in his art, he endeavors to copy the originals of the rarest painters that he knows, and the same rule holds good for all the most important crafts and callings that serve to adorn a state. Thus must he who would be esteemed prudent and patient imitate Ulysses, in whose person and honours Homer presents to us a lively picture of prudence and patience, as Virgil, too, shows us in the person of Aeneas, the virtue of a pious son, and the sagacity of a brave and skilful captain, not representing or describing them as they were, but as they ought to be, so as to leave the example of their virtues for posterity. In the same way, Amadis was the pole star, son of valiant and devoted knights, whom all we who fight under the banner of love and chivalry are bound to imitate. This then, being so, I consider, friend Sancho, that the knight-errant who shall imitate him most closely will come nearest to reaching the perfection of chivalry. Now, one of the instances in which this knight most conspicuously showed his prudence, worth, valour, endurance, fortitude, and love, was when he withdrew, rejected by the Lady Oriana, to do penance upon the Peña Pobre, changing his name into that of Beltenebros, a name assuredly significant and appropriate to the life which he had voluntarily adopted. So, as it is easier for me to imitate him in this than cleaving giants asunder, cutting off serpents' heads, slaying dragons, routing armies, destroying fleets, and breaking enchantments, and as this place is so well suited for a similar purpose, I must not allow the opportunity to escape, which now so conveniently offers me its forelock.
What is it in reality, said Sancho, that your worship means to do in such an out-of-the-way place as this?
Have I not told thee, answered Don Quixote, that I mean to imitate Amadis here, playing the victim of despair, the madman, the maniac, so as at the same time to imitate the valiant Don Roland, when at the fountain he had evidence of the fair Angelica having disgraced herself with Medoro, and through grief thereat went mad, and plucked up trees, troubled the waters of the clear springs, slew shepherds, destroyed flocks, burned down huts, levelled houses, dragged mares after him, and perpetuated 100,000 other outrages worthy of everlasting renown and record. And though I have no intention of imitating Roland or Orlando, or Rotolando, for he went by all these names, step by step in all the mad things he did, said, and thought, I will make a rough copy, to the best of my power, of all that seems to me most essential. But perhaps I shall content myself with the simple imitation of Amadis, who, without giving away to any mischievous madness, but merely to tears and sorrow, gained as much fame as the most famous.
It seems to me, said Sancho, that the knights who believed in this way had provocation and cause for their follies and penances. But what cause has your worship for going mad? What lady has rejected you, or what evidence have you found to prove that the lady Dulcinea del Toboso has been trifling with Moor or Christian?
There is the point, replied Don Quixote, and that is the beauty of this business of mine. No thanks to a knight-errant for going mad when he has cause. The thing is to turn crazy without any provocation, and let my lady know, if I do this in the dry, what I would do in the moist. Moreover, I have abundant cause in the long separation I have endured from my lady till death, Dulcinea del Toboso. For as thou didst hear that shepherd Ambrosio say the other day, in absence all ills are felt and feared. And so, friend Sancho, waste no time in advising me against so rare, so happy, and so unheard of an imitation. Mad I am, and mad I must be, until thou returnest with the answer to a letter that I mean to send by thee to my lady Dulcinea. And if it be such as my constancy deserves, my insanity and penance will come to an end. And if it be to the opposite effect, I shall become mad in earnest. And, being so, I shall suffer no more. Thus, in whatever way she may answer, I shall escape from the struggle and affliction in which thou wilt leave me, enjoying in my senses the boon thou bearest me, or, as a madman, not feeling the evil thou bringest me. But tell me, Sancho, hast thou got Mambrino's helmet safe? For I saw thee take it up from the ground when that ungrateful wretch tried to break it in pieces, but could not, by which the fineness of its temper may be seen.
All right, this is one of the best turns we've had so far. So, this current adventure, Don Quixote has decided that he will just go mad in the mountains. The lack of self-awareness is stupendous, for one. But, oh, this is perfect. I'm liking this turn. I'm liking this. To which Sancho made answer,
By the living God, good Sir Knight of the Rueful Countenance, I cannot endure or bear with patience some of the things that your worship says, and from them I begin to suspect that all you tell me about chivalry and winning kingdoms and empires and giving islands and bestowing other rewards and dignities after the custom of knights errant must be all made up of wind and lies, and all pigments or figments or whatever we may call them. For what would anyone think that heard your worship calling a barber's basin Mambrino's helmet without ever seeing the mistake all this time, but that one who says and maintains such things must have his brains addled? I have the basin in my sack all dinted, and I am taking it home to have it mended, to trim my beard in it, if by God's grace I'm allowed to see my wife and children some day or other.
Look here, Sancho, said Don Quixote. By him thou didst swear by just now. I swear thou hast the most limited understanding that any squire in the world has or ever had. Is it possible that all this time thou hast been going about with me, thou hast never found out that all things belonging to knights errant seem to be illusions and nonsense and ravenings, and to go always by contraries, and not because it really is so, but because there is always a swarm of enchanters in attendance upon us that change and alter everything with us, and turn things as they please and according as they are disposed to aid or destroy us. Thus, what seems to thee a barber's basin seems to me Mambrino's helmet, and to another it will seem something else, and rare foresight it was in the sage who is on my side to make what is really and truly Mambrino's helmet seem a basin to everybody, for, being held in such estimation as it is, all the world would pursue me to rob me of it. But when they see it is only a barber's basin, they do not take the trouble to obtain it, as was plainly shown by him who tried to break it, and left it on the ground without taking it, for by my faith, had he known it, he would never have left it behind. Keep it safe, my friend, for just now I have no need of it. Indeed, I shall have to take off all this armor and remain as naked as I was born, if I have a mind to follow Roland rather than Amadis in my penance. Thus talking, they reached the foot of a high mountain, which stood like an isolated peak among the others that surrounded it. Past its base there flowed a gentle brook. All around it spread a meadow so green and luxuriant that it was a delight to the eyes to look upon it, and forest trees in abundance, and shrubs and flowers added to the charms of the spot. Upon this place, the Knight of the Rueful Countenance fixed his choice for the performance of his penance, and as he beheld it, exclaimed in a loud voice, as though he were out of his senses, "This is the place, O ye heavens, that I select and choose for bewailing the misfortune in which ye yourselves have plunged me. This is the spot where the overflowings of mine eyes shall swell the waters of yon little brook, and my deep and endless sighs shall stir unceasingly the leaves of these mountain trees in testimony and token of the pain my persecuted heart is suffering. O ye rural deities, whoever ye be that haunt this lone spot, give ear to the complaint of a wretched lover whom long absence and brooding jealousy have driven to bewail his fate among these wilds, and complain of the hard heart of that fair and ungrateful one, the end and limit of all human beauty. O ye wood nymphs and dryads that dwell in the thickets of the forest, so may the nimble wanton satyrs be whom ye are vainly wooed never disturb your sweet repose. Help me to lament my hard fate, or at least weary not at listening to it. O Dulcinea del Toboso, day of my night, glory of my pain, guide of my path, star of my fortune." Hang on, I gotta get a quick ban. Thank you. Goodbye. Where were we? O Dulcinea del Toboso, day of my night, glory of my pain, guide of my path, star of my fortune, so may heaven grant me in full all thou seekest of it. Bethink thee of the place and condition to which absence from thee has brought me, and make that return in kindness that is due to my fidelity. O lonely trees, that from this day forward shall bear me company in my solitude, give me some sign, by the gentle movement of your boughs, that my presence is not distasteful to you. O thou, my squire, pleasant companion in my prosperous and adverse fortunes, fix well in thy memory what thou shalt see me do here, so that thou mayest relate and report it to the sole cause of all. And so saying, he dismounted from Rocinante, and in an instant relieved him of saddle and bridle, and giving him a slap on the croup, said, "He gives thee freedom, who is bereft of it himself. O steed, as excellent indeed as thou art unfortunate in thy lot, begone where thou wilt, for thou bearest written on thy forehead that neither Astolfo's hippogriff nor the famed Frontino that cost Bradamante so dear could equal thee in speed." Seeing this, Sancho said,
"Good luck to him who has saved us the trouble of stripping the pack saddle off Dapple. By my faith, he would not have gone without a slap on the croup and something said in his praise, though if he were here I would not let anyone strip him, for there would be no occasion, as he had nothing of the lover or victim of despair about him, inasmuch as his master, which I was, while it was God's pleasure, was nothing of the sort. And, indeed, Sir Knight of the Rueful Countenance, if my departure of your worship's madness are to come off in earnest, it will be as well to saddle Rocinante again, or in order that he may supply the want of Dapple, because it will save me time in going and returning, for if I go on foot I don't know when I shall get there, or when I shall get back, as I am, in truth, a bad walker."
"I declare, Sancho," returned Don Quixote, "it shall be as thou wilt, for thy plan does not seem to me a bad one, and 3 days hence thou wilt depart, for I wish thee to observe in the meantime that what I do and say for her sake, that thou mayest be able to tell it."
But what more have I to see besides what I have seen? Said Sancho.
Much thou knowest about it, said Don Quixote. I have now got to tear up my garments, to scatter about my armor, knock my head against these rocks, and more of the same sort of thing, which thou must witness.
For the love of God, said Sancho, be careful, your worship, how you give yourself these knocks on the head, for you may come across such a rock, and in such a way that the very first may put an end the whole contrivance of this penance. And I should think, if indeed knocks on the head seem necessary to you, and this business cannot be done without them, you might be content, as the whole thing is feigned, and counterfeit, and in joke. You might be content, I say, with giving them to yourself in the water, or against something soft, like cotton. And leave it all to me, for I'll tell my lady that your worship knocked your head against the point of a rock harder than a diamond.
I thank thee for thy good intentions, friend Sancho, answered Don Quixote, but I would have thee know that all these things I am doing are not in joke, but very much in earnest, for anything else would be a transgression of the ordinances of chivalry, which forbid us to tell any lie whatever, under the penalties due to apostasy. And to do one thing instead of another is just the same as lying. So my knocks on the head must be real, solid, and valid, without anything sophisticated or fanciful about them. And it will be needful to leave me some lint to dress my wounds, since fortune has compelled us to do without the balsam we lost.
It was worse losing the ass, replied Sancho, for with him lint and all were lost. But I beg of your worship not to remind me again of that accursed liquor, for my soul, not to say my stomach, turns at hearing the very name of it. And I beg of you, too, to reckon as past the 3 days you allowed me for seeing the mad things you do, for I take them as seen already and pronounced upon. And I will tell wonderful stories to my lady, so write the letter and send me off at once, for I long to return and take your worship out of this purgatory where I am leaving you.
Purgatory, dost thou call it, Sancho? Said Don Quixote. Rather call it hell, or even worse, if there be anything worse.
For one who is in hell, said Sancho, nulla est retentio, as I have heard say.
I do not understand what retentio means, said Don Quixote.
Retentio, answered Sancho, means that whoever is in hell never comes nor can come out of it, which will be the opposite case with your worship, or my legs will be idle. That is, if I have spurs to enliven Rocinante. Let me once get to El Toboso, and into the presence of my lady Dulcinea, and I will tell her such things of the follies and madnesses, for it is all one, that your worship has done and is still doing, that I will manage to make her softer than a glove, though I find her harder than a cork tree. And with her sweet and honeyed answer, I will come back through the air like a witch, and take your worship out of this purgatory that seems to be hell but is not, as there is hope of getting out of it, which, as I have said, those in hell have not, and I believe your worship will not say anything to the contrary.
That is true, said he of the rueful countenance, but how shall we manage to write the letter?
And the ass-colt order too,
added Sancho. All shall be included, said Don Quixote, and as there is no paper, it would be well done to write it on the leaves of trees, as the ancients did, or on tablets of wax, though that would be as hard to find just now as paper. But, as it just occurred to me how it may be conveniently and even more than conveniently written, and that is in the notebook that belonged to Cardenio, and thou wilt take care to have it copied on paper, in a good hand, at the first village thou comest to where there is a schoolmaster, or, if not, any sacristan will copy it. But see thou give it not to any notary to copy, for they write a law hand that Satan could not make out.
Sure thing, Don Quixote. What is to be done about the signature? Said Sancho.
The letters of Amadis were never signed, said Don Quixote.
That is all very well, said Sancho, but the order must needs be signed, and if it is copied, they will say the signature is false, and I shall be left without ass-colts.
The order shall go signed in the same book, said Don Quixote, and on seeing it, my niece will make no difficulty in obeying it. As to the love letter, thou canst put, by way of signature, yours till death, the Knight of the Rueful Countenance. And it will be no great matter if it is in some other person's hand, for, as well as I recollect, Dulcinea can neither read nor write. Nor in the whole course of her life has she seen handwriting or letter of mine. For my love and hers have been always platonic, not going beyond a modest look, and even that so seldom that I can safely swear I have not seen her 4 times in all these 12 years I've been loving her more than the light of these eyes that the earth will one day devour. And perhaps, even of those 4 times, she has not once perceived that I was looking at her. Such is the retirement and seclusion in which her father, Lorenzo Corchuelo, and her mother, Aldonza Nogales, have brought her up.
So he's actually seen her 4 times. And they've never actually seen each other. They've never spoken. They've never come across each other in the market. No. Okay. I see you, Don Quixote. I see you.
So, said Sancho, Lorenzo Corchuelo's daughter is the Lady Dulcinea del Toboso, otherwise called Aldanoza Lorenzo.
She it is, said Don Quixote, and she it is that is worthy to be a lady of the whole universe.
I know her well, said Sancho, and let me tell you, she can fling a crowbar as well as the lustiest lad in all the town. Give her a whole good. But she is a brave lass, and a right and stout one, and fit to be helpmate to any knight-errant that is or is to be, or who make her his lady the whoreson wench. What sting she has, and what a voice! I can tell you one day she posted herself on the top of the belfry of the village to call some labourers of theirs that were in a ploughed field of her father's, and though they were better than half a league off, they heard her, as well as if they were at the foot of the tower. And the best of her is that she is not a bit prudish, for she has plenty of affability, and jokes with everybody, and has a grin and a jest for everything. So, Sir Knight of the Rueful Countenance, I say you not only may and ought to do mad freaks for her sake, but you have a good right to give way to despair and hang yourself, and no one who knows of it but will say you did well, though the devil should take you, and I wish I were on my road already, simply to see her, for it is many a day since I saw her, and she must be altered by this time, for going about the fields always, and the sun and the air spoil women's looks greatly. But I must own the truth to your worship, Señor Don Quixote. Until now, I have never been under a great mistake, for I believe truly and honestly that the Lady Dulcinea must be some princess your worship was in love with, or some person of great enough to deserve the rich presents you have sent her, such as the Biscayan and the galley slaves. And many more, no doubt, for your worship must have won many victories in the time when I was not yet a squire. But all things considered, what good can it do to the Lady the Lady Dulcinea del Toboso, to have the vanquished your worship sends or will send coming to her and going down on their knees before her? Because maybe when they came she'd be hackling flax or threshing on the threshing floor, and they'd be ashamed to see her, and she'd laugh or resent the present.
I have before now told thee many times, Sancho, said Don Quixote, that thou art a mighty great chatterer, and that with a blunt wit thou art always striving at sharpness. But to show thee what a fool thou art, and how rational I am, I would have thee listen to a short story. Thou must know that a certain widow, fair, young, independent, and rich, and above all free and easy, fell in love with a sturdy, strapping young lay brother. His superior came to know of it, and one day said to the worthy widow by way of brotherly remonstrance, I am surprised, Signora, and not without good reason, that a woman of such high standing, so fair and so rich as you are, should have fallen in love with such a mean, low, stupid fellow as so-and-so, when in this house there are so many masters, graduates, and divinity students, from among whom you might choose as if they were a lot of pears, saying, this one I'll take, this one I won't take. But she replied to him with great sprightliness and candour, "My dear sir, you are very much mistaken, and your ideas are very old-fashioned, if you think that I have made a bad choice in so-and-so, fool as he seems. Because for all I want with him, he knows as much and more about philosophy than Aristotle. In the same way, Sancho, for all I want with Dulcinea del Toboso, she is just as good as the most exalted princess on earth. It is not to be supposed that all those poets who sang the praises of ladies under the fancy names they gave them had any such mistresses. Thinkest thou that the Amaryllises, the Phyllises, the Silvias, the Dianas, the Galateas, the Philidas, and all the rest of them, and that the books, the ballads, the barber shops, the theatres are full of, were full really and truly ladies of flesh and blood and mistresses of those that glorify and have glorified them? Nothing of the kind. They only invent them, for the most part, to furnish a subject for their verses, and that they may pass for lovers, or for men valiant enough to be so. And so it suffices me to think and believe that the good Aldanosa Lorenzo is fair and virtuous. And as to her pedigree, it is very little matter. For no one will examine into it for the purpose of conferring any order upon her, and I, for my part, reckon her the most exalted princess in the world. For thou shouldst know, Sancho, if thou dost not know, that two things alone, beyond all others, are incentives to love, and these are great beauty and a good name. And these two things are to be found in Dulcinea in the highest degree. For in beauty no one equals her, and in good name few approach her. And to put the whole thing in a nutshell, I persuade myself that all I say is as I say, neither more nor less, and I picture her in my imagination as I would have her to be, as well in beauty as in condition. Helen approaches her not, nor does Lucrezia come up to her, nor any other of the famous women of times past, Greek, barbarian, or Latin. And let each say what he will, for if in this I am taken to task by the ignorant, I shall not be censured by the critical.
I say your worship is entirely right, said Sancho, and that I am an ass. But I know not how the name of ass came into my mouth, for rope is not to be mentioned in the house of him who is to be hanged. But now for the letter, and then God be with you. I am off.
Don Quixote took out the notebook, and, retiring to one side, very deliberately began to write the letter. And when he had finished it, he called to Sancho, saying he wished to read it to him, so that he might commit it to memory, in case of losing it on the road, for, with evil fortune like his, anything might be apprehended. To which Sancho replied,
Write it 2 or 3 times there in the book, and give it to me, and I will carry it very carefully, because to expect me to keep it in my memory is all nonsense, for I have such a bad one that I often forget my own name. But for all that, repeat it to me, as I shall like to hear it, for surely it will run as if it was in print.
Listen, said Don Quixote, this is what it says. Don Quixote's letter to Dulcinea del Toboso. Sovereign and exalted lady, the pierced by the point of absence, the wounded to the heart's core, sends thee sweetest, Dulcinea del Toboso, the health that he... Sorry, got shortly distracted. Hey, welcome! Thanks for following, and welcome to a fellow lover of Don Quixote and literature. Sovereign and exalted lady, the pierced by the point of absence, the wounded to the heart's core, sends thee sweetest Dulcinea del Toboso, the health that he himself enjoys not. If thy beauty despises me, if thy worth is not for me, if thy scorn is my affliction, though I be sufficiently long-suffering, hardly shall I endure this anxiety, which, besides being oppressive, is protracted. My good squire Sancho will relate to thee in full, fair ingrate, dear enemy, the condition to which I am reduced on thy account. If it be thy pleasure to give me relief, I am thine. If not, do as may be pleasing to thee, for by ending my life I shall satisfy thy cruelty and my desire. Thine till death, the Knight of the Rueful Countenance. buying physical books is a great thing, a great habit. But I will mention that Don Quixote and most of what we read is available in the public domain. I encourage everyone to drop over to like Project Gutenberg or many of the other various places to pick up free ebook copies of things. Physical copies are wonderful. I encourage them. I have a robust library of my own, but that should never be a restriction on finding things to read. There's always so many free options, especially for old classics like this. And I got diverted there, so let's get back to it.
By the life of my father,
Said Sancho, when he read the letter.
it is the loftiest thing I ever heard. Body of me! How your worship says everything as you like in it, and how well you fit in the Knight of the Rueful Countenance into the signature. I declare, your worship is indeed the very devil. There is nothing you don't know.
Everything is needed for the calling I follow, said Don Quixote.
Now then, said Sancho, let your worship put the order for the 3 ass-colts on the other side, and sign it very plainly, that they may recognize it at first sight.
With all my heart, said Don Quixote, and as he had written it, he read it to this effect. Mistress Niece, by this first of ass-colts, please pay to Sancho Panza, my squire, 3 of the 5 I left at home in your charge. Said 3 ass-colts to be paid and delivered, for the same number received here in hand, which upon this and upon his receipt shall be duly paid. Done in the heart of the Sierra Morena, the 27th of August, of this present year.
That will do, said Sancho. Now let your worship sign it.
There is no need to sign it, said Don Quixote, but merely to put my flourish, which is the same as a signature, and enough for 3 asses, or even 300.
I can trust your worship, returned Sancho. Let me go and saddle Rocinante, and be ready to give me your blessing, for I mean to go at once without seeing the fooleries your worship is going to do. I'll say I saw you do so many that she will not want any more.
At any rate, Sancho, said Don Quixote, I should like, and there is reason for it, I should like thee, I say, to see me stripped to the skin and performing a dozen or 2 of insanities, which I can get done in less than half an hour. For having seen them with thine own eyes, thou canst then safely swear to the rest that thou wouldst add, and I promise thee thou wilt not tell of as many as I mean to perform.
For the love of God, master mine, said Sancho, let me not see your worship stripped, for it will sorely grieve me, and I shall not be able to keep from tears, and my head aches so with all I shed last night for Dapple, that I am not fit to begin any fresh weeping. But if it is your worship's pleasure, then that I should see some insanities, do them in your clothes, short ones, and such as come ready stand, for I myself want nothing of the sort. And as I have said, it will be a saving of time for my return, which will be with the news your worship desires and deserves. If not, let the Lady Dulcinea look to it. If she does not answer reasonably, I swear as solemnly as I can that I will fetch a fair answer out of her stomach, with kicks and cuffs. For why should it be borne that a knight-errant as famous as your worship should go mad without rhyme or reason for her ladyship had best not drive me to say it, for, by God, I will speak out and let off everything cheap, even if it doesn't sell. I am pretty good at that. But she little knows me. Faith, if she knew me, she'd be in awe of me.
In faith, Sancho, said Don Quixote, to all appearance, thou art no sounder in thy wits than I.
I am not so mad, answered Sancho, but I am more peppery. But apart from all this, what is your worship to eat until I come back? Will you sally out on the road like Cardenio to force it from the shepherds?
Let not that anxiety trouble thee, replied Don Quixote, for even if I had it, I should not eat anything but the herbs and the fruit which this meadow and these trees may yield me. The beauty of this business of mine lies in not eating and in performing other mortifications.
Do you know what I am afraid of, said Sancho upon this? That I shall not be able to find my way back to this spot where I am leaving you. It is such an out-of-the-way place.
Observe the landmarks well, said Don Quixote, for I will try not to go far from this neighborhood, and I will even take care to mount the highest of these rocks to see if I can discover thee returning. However, not to miss me and lose thyself, the best plan will be to cut some branches of the broom that is so abundant about here. And as thou goest to lay them at intervals until thou hast come out upon the plain, these will serve thee, after the fashion of the clue in the labyrinth of Theseus, as marks and signs for finding me on thy return.
So I will,
said Sancho Panza, and having cut some, he asked his master's blessing, and, not without many tears on both sides, took his leave of him, and, mounting Rocinante, of whom Don Quixote charged him earnestly to have as much care as of his own person, he set out for the plain, strewing at intervals the branches of broom as his master had recommended him. And so he went his way, though Don Quixote still entreated him to see him do were it only a couple of mad acts. He had not gone 100 paces, however, when he returned and said,
I must say, Signor, your worship said quite right, that in order to be able to swear without a weight on my conscience that I had seen you do mad things, it would be well for me to see if it were only one. Though in your worship's remaining here, I have seen a very great one.
Did I not tell thee so? Said Don Quixote. Wait, Sancho, and I will do them in the saying of a credo. And pulling off his breeches in all haste, he stripped himself to his skin and his shirt, and then, without more ado, he cut a couple of gambados in the air, and a couple of somersaults, heels over head, making such a display not to see it a second time. Sancho wheeled Rocinante around, and felt easy, and satisfied in his mind that he could swear he had left his master mad. And so we will leave him to follow his road until his return, which was a quick one. Alright guys, we've run a little bit over our normal break time, so let's go ahead and take a short time to step aside, stretch our legs, top up our drinks, and wet the whistles. And we'll be back in just a little while. Thanks.
All right, I'm settling back in. So you guys are making some very good points over in chat. There's a very real difference between having a physical copy in hand and reading an ebook. I will readily admit. I very much love having physical copies of a lot of what I read. I've got a bunch of Shakespeare and a few copies of different Homer things just on the shelf behind me. When we read the Odyssey, that was from my paper copy. So I totally agree. It's a different experience, and if you're able to, having a robust home library is a privilege that I fully, wholeheartedly, and with my full voice endorse. Not everyone is able to, and that is also totally fine. That is why the ongoing efforts for archival and retention of all sorts of media is an important effort, and the various organizations that do it, Gutenberg, Internet Archive, etc., are valiant souls and very, very well loved. Oh man, yeah. We read the Odyssey relatively early in the channel, and it was a lot of fun. At some point, I want to go back and read the Iliad, but I think the Odyssey is a lot more approachable of the great Homer classics. We did the great Theban plays by Sophocles with the Oedipus cycle. Those were a lot of fun. That was a bit of an awkward one to do. Plays, particularly the old Greek plays, are kind of hard to do as a one-man show. But I will take the opportunity to remind everyone that we do have a YouTube channel as well. We multi-stream to both YouTube and Twitch every time we read. And all of our readings are archived on the YouTube side. So if you'd like, we've got a year's worth of VODs available on YouTube. All of the things we've read, from Hemingway to La Morte d'Arthur, and all sorts of things. Yeah, some wig toggles and some... I don't know that I've read Lucretius. I'll need to look that up. Admittedly, my scope of the Greek classics is a little bit on the shallow side. I've read a couple of the big names, but I've not gone terribly deep, at least not since my classics class in undergrad, and that's been a number of years now. But I will need to look that up. Let me take a note to look up Lucretius. Because, I mean, honestly, I like just about anything that's been put to pen, so there is that. I'm relatively easy to please. All right, let's try and get through another chapter or two tonight. We had a couple days off, so I would like to try and get through the full time. Oh, okay, he's the one that wrote On the Nature of Things. Okay, so I'm familiar with the work. I wasn't familiar with the author there. That's one that definitely I should loop back and take a specific look at. I don't read a whole lot of philosophy type things, but it is nice every once in a while. I usually err more toward fiction and casual readings, but from time to time, something particularly thought-provoking like that is certainly welcome. All right, so as I was saying, let's go ahead and jump back in. Let's try and get another chapter or two in tonight, with our last couple days off. Okay, we read Walden. We didn't enjoy Walden. And let's be real. Thoreau is fiction. The man is as fake as they come. Alright, so let's get back to Don Quixote with chapter 26, in which are continued the refinements wherewith Don Quixote played the part of a lover in the Sierra Morena.
Simba, what are you doing?
Leave my drink alone, buddy. Returning to the proceedings of him of the rueful countenance, when he found himself alone, the history says that when Don Quixote had completed the performance of the somersaults or capers, naked from the waist down and clothed from the waist up, and saw that Sancho had gone off without waiting to see any more crazy feats, he climbed up to the top of a high rock, and there set himself to consider what he had several times before considered without ever coming to any conclusion on the point. Namely, whether it would be better or more to his purpose to imitate the outrageous madness of Roland, or the melancholy madness of Amadis. And, communing with himself, he said, "What wonder is it if Roland was so good a knight and so valiant as everyone says he was, when, after all, he was enchanted and nobody could kill him save by thrusting a corking pin into the sole of his foot, and he always wore shoes with 7 iron soles, though cunning devices did not avail him against Bernardo del Carpio, who knew all about them, and strangling him in his arms at Roncesvalles. But putting the question of his valor aside, let us come to his losing his wits. For certain it is that he did lose them in consequence of the proofs he discovered at the fountain, and the intelligence the shepherd gave him of Angelica having slept more than 2 siestas with Medoro, a little curly-headed Moor, and page Agramanta. If he was persuaded that this was true, and that his lady had wronged him, it is no wonder that he should have gone mad. But how am I to imitate him in his madness, unless I can imitate him in the closet? For my Dulcinea, I will venture to swear, never saw a Moor in her life, as he is in his proper costume, and she is this day as the mother that bore her, and I should plainly be doing her a wrong if fancying anything else. I were to go mad, with the same kind of madness as Roland the Furious. On the other hand, I see that Amadis of Gaul, without losing his senses and without doing anything mad, acquired as a lover as much fame as the most famous. For, according to his history, on finding himself rejected by his lady Oriana, who had ordered him not to appear in her presence until it should be her pleasure, all he did was to retire to Pina Pobre, in company with a hermit, and there he took his fill of weeping until heaven sent him relief in the midst of his great grief and need. And if this be true, as it is, why should I now take the trouble to strip stark naked, or do mischief to these trees which have done me no harm? Or why am I to disturb the clear waters of these brooks which will give me to drink whatever I have a mind? Long live the memory of Amadis, and let him be imitated so far as is possible by Don Quixote of La Mancha, of whom it will be said, as was said of the other, that if he did not achieve great things, he died in attempting them. And if I am not repulsed or rejected by my Dulcinea, it is enough for me, as I have said, to be absent from her. And so, now to business. Come, to my memory, ye deeds of Amadis, and show me how I am to begin to imitate you. I know already that what he chiefly did was to pray and commend himself to God. But what am I to do for a rosary? For I have not got one. And then it occurred to him how he might make one, and that was by tearing a great strip off the tail of his shirt, which hung down, and making 11 knots on it, one bigger than the rest. And this served him for a rosary all the time he was there, during which he repeated countless Ave Marias. But what distressed him greatly was not having another hermit there to confess him, and receive consolation from, and so he solaced himself with pacing up and down the little meadow, and writing and carving on the bark of the trees and on the fine sand a multitude of verses, all in harmony with his sadness, and some in praise of Dulcinea. But when he was found there afterwards, the only ones completely legible that could be discovered were those
that follow here. Ye on the mountainside that grow, ye green things all, trees, shrubs, and bushes. Are ye aweary of the woe that this poor aching bosom crushes? If it disturb you, and I owe some reparation, it may be a defense for me to let you know Don Quixote's tears are on the flow, and all for distant Dulcinea del Toboso. The lealest lover time can show, doomed for lady love to languish, among these solitudes doth go, a prey to every kind of anguish. Why love should, like a spiteful foe, thus use him, he hath no idea, but hogsheads full, this doth he know, Don Quixote's tears are on the flow, and all for distant Dulcinea del Toboso. Adventure-seeking doth he go, up rugged heights, down rocky valleys, but hill or dale, or high or low, mishap attendeth all his sallies. Love still pursues him to and fro, and plies his cruel scourge. Ah me! A relentless fate and endless woe, Don Quixote's tears are on the flow, and all for distant Dulcinea del Toboso. The addition of Del Toboso to Dulcinea's name gave rise to no little laughter among those who found the above lines, for they suspected Don Quixote must have fancied that unless he added Del Toboso when he introduced the name of Dulcinea, the verse would be unintelligible, which was indeed the fact, as he himself afterwards admitted. He wrote many more, but, as has been said, these 3 verses were all that could be plainly and perfectly deciphered. In this way, and in sighing and calling on the fauns and satyrs of the woods and the nymphs of the streams, an echo, moist and mournful to answer, console and hear him, as well as in looking for herbs to sustain him, he passed his time until Sancho's return. And had that been delayed 3 weeks, as it was 3 days, the Knight of the Rueful Countenance would have worn such an altered countenance that the mother that bore him would not have known him. And here it will be best to leave him, wrapped up in sighs and verses, to relate how Sancho Panza fared on his mission. Let's take a quick moment to appreciate the translation here, because it kept meter to that, and it kept the rhyme, which is actually quite impressive. I will always appreciate a good translation that takes good attention to poetry like that. As for him, coming out upon the high road, he made for El Toboso, and the next day reached the inn where the mishap of the blanket had befallen him. As soon as he recognized it, he felt as if he were once more living through the air. He could not bring himself to enter it through though it was an hour when he might well have done so, for it was dinner time, and he longed to taste something hot, as it had been all cold fare with him for many days past. This craving drove him to draw near to the inn, still undecided whether to go in or not. And as he was hesitating, there came out 2 persons who had once recognized him, and said one to the other, "Signor Licensate, is he not on the horse there, Sancho Panza, who our adventurer's housekeeper told us went off with her master as esquire?" "So it is," said the licensate, "and that is our friend Don Quixote's horse, and if they knew him so well, it was because they were curate and the barber of his own village. The same who had carried out the scrutiny and sentence upon the books." And as soon as they recognized Sancho Panza and Rocinante, being anxious to hear of Don Quixote, they approached, and, calling him by his name, the curate said, "Sancho Panza, where is your master?" Sancho recognized them at once, and determined to keep secret the place and circumstances where and under which he had left his master, so he replied that his master was engaged in a certain quarter, on a certain matter of great importance to him, which he could not disclose for the eyes in his head. "Nay, nay," said the barber. "If you don't tell us where he is, Sancho Panza, we will suspect you, as we suspect already, that you have murdered and robbed him, for here you are mounted on his horse, In fact, you must produce the master of the hack, or else take the consequences.
There is no need of threats with me, said Sancho, for I am not a man to rob or murder anybody. Let his own fate, or God who made him, kill each one. My master is engaged very much to his taste doing penance in the midst of these mountains.
And then, offhand and without stopping, he told them how he had left him, what adventures had befallen him, and how he was carrying a letter to the Lady Dulcinea del Toboso, the daughter of Lorenzo Corchuelo, with whom he was over head and ears in love. They were both amazed at what Sancho Panza told them, for though they were aware of Don Quixote's madness and the nature of it, each time they heard of it, they were filled with fresh wonder. They then asked Sancho Panza to show them the letter he was carrying to the Lady Dulcinea del Toboso. He said it was written in a notebook, and that his master's directions were that he should have it copied on paper at the first village he came to. On this, the curate said if he showed it to him, he himself would make a fair copy of it. Sancho put his hand into his bosom in search of the notebook, but could not find it. Nor, if he had been searching until now, could he have found it, for Don Quixote had kept it, and had never given it to him, nor had he himself thought of asking for it. When Sancho discovered he could not find the book, his face grew deadly pale, and in great haste he again felt his body all over, and seeing plainly it was not to be found, without more ado he seized his beard with both hands and plucked away half of it. And then, as quick as he could, and without stopping, gave himself half a dozen cuffs on the face and nose till they were bathed in blood. Seeing this, the curate and the barber asked him what had happened to him, that he gave himself such rough treatment.
What should happen to me, replied Sancho, but to have lost from one hand to the other in a moment 3 ass colts, each of them like a castle.
How is that?
I have lost the notebook, said Sancho, that contained the letter to Dulcinea, and an order signed by my master in which he directed his niece to give me 3 ass colts out of 4 or 5 he had at home.
And then he told them about the loss of Dapple. The curate consoled him, telling him that when his master was found he would get him to renew the order and make a fresh draft on paper, as was usual and customary, for those made in notebooks were never accepted or honored. Sancho comforted himself with this, and said if that were so, the loss of Dulcinea's letter did not trouble him much, for he had it almost by heart, and it could be taken down from him whenever and wherever they liked. Repeat it then, Sancho, said the barber, and we will write it down afterwards. Sancho Panza stopped to scratch his head and to bring back the letter to his memory, and balanced himself now on one foot, now the other, one moment staring at the ground, the next at the sky, and after having half gnawed off the end of a finger and kept them in suspense waiting for him to begin, he said, after a long pause,
My God, Signor Licensate, devil a thing can I recollect of the letter, but it said at the beginning, exalted and scrubbing lady.
It cannot have said scrubbing, said the barber, but superhuman or sovereign.
That is it, said Sancho. Then, as well as I can remember, it went on, the wounded and wanting of sleep, and the pierced kisses your worship's hands, ungrateful and very unrecognized fair one, and it said something or other about health and sickness that he was sending her, and from that it went tailing off until it ended with yours till death, the Knight of the Rueful Countenance.
It gave them no little amusement, both of them, to see what a good memory Sancho had, and they complimented him greatly upon it, and begged him to repeat the letter a couple of times more, so that they too might get it by heart, to write it out by and by. Sancho repeated it 3 times, and as he did, uttered 3,000 more absurdities. Then he told them more about his master, but he never said a word about the blanketing that had befallen himself in that inn, into which he refused to enter. He told them, moreover, how his lord, if he brought him a favorable answer from the Lady Dulcinea del Toboso, was to put himself in the way of endeavoring to become an emperor, or at least a monarch, for it had been so settled between them. And with his personal worth and the might of his arm, it was an easy matter to come to be one. And how, on becoming one, his lord was to make a marriage for him, for he would be a widower by that time as a matter of course, and was to give him a wife as one of the damsels of the Empress, the heiress of some rich and grand state on the mainland, having nothing to do with islands of any sort, for he did not care for them now. All this Sancho delivered with so much composure, wiping his nose from time to time, and with so little common sense that his two hearers were again filled with wonder at the force of Don Quixote's madness that could run away with this poor man's reason. They did not care to take the trouble of disabusing him of his error, as they considered that since it did not in any way hurt his conscience, it would be better to leave him in it, and they wouldn't have all the more amusement to listening to his simplicities, and so they bade him pray to God for his lord's health, as it was a very likely and a very feasible thing for him in course of time to come to be an emperor, as he said, or at least an archbishop or some other dignitary of equal rank. To which Sancho made answer,
If fortune, sirs, should bring things about in such a way that my master should have a mind, instead of being an emperor, to be an archbishop, I should like to know what archbishops errant commonly give their squires.
They commonly give them, said the curate, some simple benefice or cure,
Some simple benefice or cure, or some place as sacristan, which brings them a good fixed income, not counting the altar fees, which may be reckoned at as much more. But for that, said Sancho, the squire must be unmarried, and must know, at any rate, how to help at mass. And if that be so, woe is me, for I am married already, and I don't know the first letter of the ABC.
Thank you, Sancho.
What will become of me if my master takes a fancy to be an archbishop and not an emperor, as is usual and customary with knights errant?
Be not uneasy, friend Sancho, said the barber, for we will entreat your master and advise him, even urging it upon him as a case of conscience, to become an emperor and not an archbishop, because it will be easier for him, as he is more valiant than lettered.
So I have thought, said Sancho, though I can tell you he is fit for anything. What I mean to do for my part is to pray to our Lord to place him where it may be best for him, and where he may be able to bestow most favours upon me.
You speak like a man of sense, said the curate, and you will be acting like a good Christian. But what must now be done is to take steps to coax your master out of that useless penance you say he is performing. And we had best turn into this inn to consider what plan to adopt, and also to dine, for it is now time. Sancho said that they might go in, but that he would wait outside, and that he would tell them afterwards the reason why he was unwilling, and why it did not suit him to enter it. But he begged them to bring him out something to eat, and to let it be hot, and also to bring barley for Rocinante. They left him and went in, and presently the barber brought him out something to eat. By and by, after they had between them carefully thought over what they should do to carry out their object, the curate hit upon... lost track here. The curate hit upon an idea very well adapted to humor Don Quixote, and affect their purpose, and his notion, which he explained to the barber, was that he himself should assume the disguise of a wandering damsel, while the other should try as best as he could to pass for a squire, and that they should thus proceed to where Don Quixote was, and he, pretending to be an aggrieved and distressed damsel, should ask a favour of him, which as a valiant knight-errant he could not refuse to grant, and the favour he meant to ask him was that he should accompany her whither she would conduct him, in order to redress a wrong which a wicked knight had done her, while at the same time she should entreat him not to require her to remove her mask, nor ask her any question touching her circumstances until he had righted her with the wicked knight. And he had no doubt that Don Quixote would comply with any request made in these terms, and that in this way they might remove him and take him to his own village, where they would endeavor to find out if his extraordinary madness admitted of any kind of remedy. Now the village men are conspiring against him, or for him, as the case may be. It's definitely to the greater good, but he will not see it that way, I'm certain.
This translation is by John Ormsby. It was translated in... when was that? I don't know if it's got a year on this. But yeah, this one was... Yeah, John Ormsby. Let me type it out here. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very impressed with this translation. The prose is well done. It seems reasonably accurate. I don't speak Spanish, obviously, as you may have caught on by my abysmal pronunciations of names that come up. But in general, this is a fantastic translation that I've seen. We've come across a few very good translations of various works that we've read. Whether they be from French or we read Beowulf and it was very well translated. So there are some people that do a very, very good job of keeping things true to the translation, true to the source, while also maintaining a good balance of prose and meter and sometimes even the couplets. So the people that are translating these classics are very dedicated and have my utmost respect. Yeah, Beowulf was a treat. That was a fun balance of action and bravado that just kept on giving. And I love how often it's been adapted or been the inspiration for things. Oh, Faust. Yeah, Faust was very, very well translated. And that can be a difficult one to translate too, because German translating and maintaining a meter is honestly that's a feat. That is heroic levels of jumping through hoops. All right, and actually looking ahead, our next chapter is quite long, at about 15 pages. So I think we would probably be best served by putting that off to next time. So let's just chat for a little bit. We're having a bit of a run of it so far tonight. So yeah, I will reiterate, since we've had a couple more people dropping in, as of yesterday, the YouTube channel has been going for a year to the day. So we just missed our anniversary. I was woefully ill, unfortunately. But that does not mean that we are not celebrating. Starting next week, we're going to have a slight change in our schedule. I am looking to start incorporating modern readings on Saturdays. These will be unarchived to stay in line and with the copyright gods, but we will be having fun with them. So we'll be reading some things that are a little bit more modern, things like Tolkien or like Dune, if we want to go sci-fi, any sort of just modern masters. And that might be a little much for me, but you know what? Maybe. Who am I to tell? Although I don't really include that in the modern masters, but I'm not one to judge. But yeah, we'll start that next week on Saturday. and the rest of our schedule will remain unchanged. And as a reminder, we read 4 times a week on Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. For most of those days, we start at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and run until 10. On the upcoming changes to Saturdays, we will be running from 6 p.m. until 10. Just to get a little bit more time in there, since we're only doing the modern books once a week. A little bit extra time will be both A, good for the format, because Twitch likes longer streams, and also we'll be able to really get into it. So look forward to that. I'm not certain, well, we'll probably start off with Tolkien, because I had previously said that we would do a marathon reading for the anniversary, but that was unable to happen. So that's probably where we will start. I'm thinking Fellowship of the Ring to start us off on Saturday, and then we'll continue to be reading Don Quixote on our other 2-hour readings. All of these readings will continue to be on both YouTube and Twitch. However, the Saturday readings will be unarchived. In addition, I have a big reveal coming on this coming Saturday, so I encourage you to drop in and join in the fun. It's something that has been cooking since, I think, September or so, so I will be happy to pull the curtain aside for that one. It'll be a relatively profound change. We'll see. And hopefully, it'll go over well. We'll see. It'll be fun. I am happy with what we have to bring, and I think you guys will be too. But that really isn't to take anything away from the fact that we're here for the books. We're here for the classics and the reading, and all of the rest is just window dressing. And that's fine. That is fine with me. So, with that, let's go ahead and wrap just a little bit early tonight. We've gotten through the duration of tonight's reading as I was hoping to. I'm not quite back at 100%, but I am feeling well enough. So we will be back on Tuesday for our next regularly scheduled reading, where we will be continuing Don Quixote from chapter 27. I'm very glad you stopped in to join us. I do my best to be consistent on this. Akamos will attest, I think we can count on one hand how many days we've missed, so we are relatively set by clockwork. So, I'm happy to have you among our community for as long as you will join us. I wasn't going to say that, Z, but you know what? Shh. Alright, let's go ahead and see if I can get the raid function to work tonight, because we don't really have very great luck about it. So we'll see if we can find someone else that is reading tonight and bounce along, because readers gotta support each other, right? So let's see. This person just started poetry and readings. Let's see if they're accepting raiders. Oh, hey, all right. So we are going to Raven 713. I hope you guys had a good time tonight, and until next time, have a wonderful night. Bye now.